But on Iraq, this was a deeply unpopular war in Australia from the start.
Yes, I know that.
Why did you commit Australia to the war?
Well, I committed Australia to that war for a number of reasons. One of them was the American alliance. Another of them was my genuine belief that there were weapons of mass destruction, and that was a very strong factor in our decision. And that was incidentally Mr. Rudd's belief. Mr. Rudd said that it was an empirical fact that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. And I think the American concern at the time, which people have now forgotten, is not that Saddam had been involved in the attack on September 11. George Bush never believed that, and he never argued that himself. But I think the Americans were legitimately concerned that the Iraqis under Saddam would be involved in facilitating another attack against the United States. And people have forgotten again that Saddam used to give every Palestinian family that sent a suicide bomber into Israel $25,000 reward.
But he wasn't linked to Al-Qaeda.
No, but
there were no weapons of mass destruction.
But hang on, I'm not...
And Mr. Howard, 4,500 coalition soldiers have died there. The estimate of the Iraqis who've died is astronomical. I mean, some figures say 600,000, some say more, impossible to know. Do you not have any regrets about Iraq?
No, I don't. David, all deaths are tragic, whatever the circumstances. And when you're talking about Iraqis that may have died in the post-invasion violence, you've got to remember the hundreds of thousands that Saddam murdered, and the hundreds of thousands he might have murdered if he'd remained in power. And you've got to think that as a result of this, if we end up with a tolerably democratic Arab country, that will be a huge step forward. There's only one democracy in the Middle East at the present time, and that's Israel. And if we end up with another one, I think that will be a huge step forward.
The other issue you were often criticised over was boat people. What do you make of the recent increase in arrivals?
Oh, it's a direct result, in my view, at least in part, in substantial part, due to the change in policy.
So do you think the Pacific solution, the temporary protection visas, should be brought back?
I don't think any of those things should have been changed. No, I don't. Look, in 2001, the boats were coming in very large numbers. Everyone remembers that. And when we turned them, to Tampa back, and we brought in the Pacific solution and adopted the policy of towing the boats back to territorial waters if they were seaworthy, Indonesian territorial waters, that stopped the boat people coming. And what has happened since the new government's come into office? They have changed all of that, and people are reacting accordingly. Now, the great thing out of that period was that support for orthodox immigration amongst the Australian people rose. And you've got to remember, every time somebody wins a refugee place through coming illegally, they knock somebody out of the refugee quota who's been waiting for years in a refugee camp from coming here. So, I mean, you've got to look at the whole picture before you make a judgment about compassion.
You mentioned the Tampa. Of the 430 odd people on board, all but 11 were found to be refugees.
Yes, but David, the point about that was a demonstration that if you wanted to come to this country and be certain of getting to it, you had to go through the orthodox channels. And I mean, just look at the numbers. We stopped the boats coming. The government has changed the policy, and they are coming again. Now, I think in part because of the change. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but I think that's a very significant reason.
One other issue that you were often criticised over was reconciliation. You were the only former Prime Minister not to come when Kevin Rudd apologised to the stolen generations. Why did you stay away? Well,
firstly, and I'll answer the question directly, but firstly, reconciliation doesn't equal a formal apology. They are, although they're parallel things, they're separate. I would have been a hypocrite. I'd been Prime Minister for almost 12 years, and I had steadfastly said there were reasons why there shouldn't be a formal apology.
Do you still hold those views?
Yes, I do. I haven't changed my view on that at all. I don't share the view that some people have that we should be apologising the current generation for the alleged misdeeds of an earlier generation.
Your argument was always that it would open the floodgates to compensation.
No, that wasn't the only... No, David, no. I said there was a possibility of that, but that wasn't the only argument. I thought the Bringing Them Home report was quite a flawed document. It didn't really try and present a broader picture. You know, David, it's very easy to apologise for the mistakes of other people. It's a lot harder to apologise for mistakes that you might make. And I get a little sceptical of politicians in office who are apologising for past errors, but are, you know, unwilling to ever sort of address the possibility of apologising for their own.
The Liberal Party?
Yeah.
Do you think they're being too negative in opposition?
No, I don't. When we got into power in 1996, the Labor Party opposed everything. I mean, not only did we get rid of that huge debt, 96 billion, and leave a terrific budget, we had to do it in the face of 12 years of opposition. The Labor Party opposed all our spending cuts in Peter Costello's first budget. They opposed tax reform, they opposed waterfront reform, they opposed privatisation of Telstra that helped pay off debt. They opposed the accumulation, therefore, of all the surplus. I mean, they're happy to say thank you. Well, they don't actually say thank you. They're just happy to take the surplus. But everything we did to build it up, they opposed. I don't think the opposition's being too negative. I don't at all, no.
What do you think about the so-called 14 dinosaurs, the long-serving Liberal MPs who some want to push out?
Look, that is a story based on an anonymous paper from an unnamed businessman. I mean,
do you think Philip Ruddock, Bromwell Bishop have every right to go around again?
Yes, I think Philip's done a terrific job. He was a terrific minister. He was the safest slipsfieldsman that any captain of a political team could have.
You'd endorse him?
I would.
Do you miss the trappings of office?
I don't miss the trappings.
The flights, the cooks, the chauffeur-driven cars, the Kirribilli house?
Oh, look, don't get me wrong. I mean, it was a great privilege, but I don't miss it in the sense that I sort of feel I can't survive without it. I mean, look, David, I thought it was a privilege every single day that I was Prime Minister, and I got up every day, no matter how difficult the issue was, with an anticipation of what could be done, and I did find the job so stimulating, but most of all a huge privilege. But I knew it wasn't going to last forever. It didn't. It lasted longer than I thought it would when I first got the job, much longer, and now I've adjusted.
Must be hard going from Kirribilli House to the suburbs of Sydney. What about your wife? Does she miss it?
No. Look, we've gone back to our old family home, which we kept vacant for 12 years, and it's a terrific house.
What about your car? Did you keep your driver's licence?
I kept my driver's licence. I drive a little bit, not as much as I did before I became Prime Minister, but I did keep my licence.
Was that a bit of an adjustment, getting behind the wheel again?
Oh, no, I've done it a bit, not a lot, but I've done it a bit. But those things, you adjust very quickly. I was not somebody who ever believed that, the trappings of us. And Australian Prime Ministers, if they're sensible, keep their feet on the ground and don't get too carried away with those things. So
a lot of people ask me when I mention I'm talking to you, what does he do with his days nowadays? Well,
I'm travelling quite a bit. I've signed up to the Washington Speakers Bureau and I make speeches overseas. I'm writing a book, which I'm enjoying immensely.
What do you think the title will be?
I don't know yet. I've got a couple of ideas, but...
you want to share any?
No, not yet. I've got to talk to my publisher. And I'm enjoying that, and I play a bit of golf, and I'm doing a few, helping in different ways for a few non-profit organisations, which I'm enjoying doing.
And what now for John Howard? Is that what you see in the future?
Oh, yes. I enjoy very much the company of my now 21-month-old grandson, Angus, and I see a lot of my children. One of my sons is still working in America, so I'm very happy to go to America on every available opportunity, so I can drop by and see him. And but we just live a family existence in the burbs, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a fantastic city, Sydney.
You ever get frustrated having run the country, had those levers at your disposal for almost 12 years, watching what's happening? Does it ever?
No, I don't. Look, I've adjusted. I wanted to win the last election. I was disappointed I didn't, but I didn't, and I accept that. And I wish my party well. I mean, I want the Liberal Party to get back into office as soon as possible.
Do you think they'll win?
Look, anything can happen. It's hard to win when you've only been in opposition for one term. It's only happened once. It happened to Scullin in, 1931. Even Whitlam had had 2 terms, although it was only 3 years. So it's tough, but it's happened at a state level, although you can't really compare state with federal, but it has happened at state level. We've had 3 one-term governments in Australia at state level since the war, so anything can happen, but it'll be tough. And the public always cuts a new leader a lot of slack. And I think one of the reasons Kevin Rudd's doing very well in the polls at the moment is that the public is quite scared about the economic situation and they want him to be right.
They're not cutting Malcolm Turnbull much slack, though, are they? The public.
But that, look, the one is the obverse of the other. I mean, if the incumbent is enjoying high ratings, the opponent doesn't. But what I'm really saying is that it doesn't surprise me that his ratings are reasonably high, because things are crook around the world with the economy, and people are worried, and they want, for very good reason, they want their Prime Minister, whoever he may be, whatever his politics are, they want him to be right. So they will therefore assume and trust that he's right until they are convinced or persuaded that he's not. And I think we're still going through that first stage.
Final question, Mr. Howard. In one word, how would you describe your Prime Ministership?
Oh, it can't be one word, it's 3 words. A huge privilege.
John Howard, thank you.
Thank you.